finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
The financial services industry is often criticized for its focus on selling products rather than providing comprehensive financial planning services. In this part 2 of 2 with Daniel Wrenne of Wrenne Financial Planning, he highlights the importance of financial literacy and the common misconception that financial planners are only for those lacking financial knowledge.
Yeah, and he says that the type of person who would benefit from a financial planner is someone who values assistance and accountability, particularly individuals who are financially literate but struggle with execution. Could this be you? Find out now.
That owned debt-free logging companies with 100 employees. And it would be like, must be nice to be the Hindmarshes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you own $150 million a year company. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a dopey country doctor. I mean, like, come on, man. What do you think we make? You know,
But I'm going to have to think of the name of that book
Comparison is the root of joy.
and link it. And I will. But that was really fascinating talking. That was more focused on retirement because I'm like, we're getting to that phase now, which, be the next thing that we talk about is how much do you really need to be comfortable and happy, and what are your goals? And as you get to retirement, which is the one thing I want to talk about is, well, a couple things. Like, how do people know if they need a financial planner? If they're drifting along life and they make it in their 30s and 40s, do you need one then? Do you need one only if you think you need one? Do you need one when you're getting to retirement? And then when you get to retirement, I mean, you start really looking at values then, which maybe should be your whole life. And the whole thing of value-driven financial planning, which we, brought up and wanted to talk about. So who needs a financial planner? Like anybody, anytime, if you think you need it, or for sure if you're retiring, or what would you say? Since you're a financial planner.
I mean, I'm going to say everybody needs one. No, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think of the people that work with us. That's a hard one for me to answer because I'm a financial planner, but like I try to look at the people that work with us and where it's working the best, it feels like. And so it's not always like the people that are like financially ignorant. A lot of people think that that's one thing. Like if I don't know finance, I get the financial planner to do finance for me. That's not correct. So that's actually not healthy for us. Like we have hard times working with people that don't have as high a financial literacy because it's like we're just not on the same page. So I think the type of person that needs a financial planner would be somebody that is the type that values help from other people. Like the type of person that's going to get like a personal trainer, or at least, that mindset is probably like a good characteristic. Like I have a personal trainer. I love it because it's such a great accountability partner. And it's something I feel like is extremely valuable. Like my health is extremely valuable. And if paying them can help me become healthier, like it's worth a lot of money to me. And so I think it's similar to your finances. Like if your finances are not like fantastic, if you don't have like a great plan, like if you're, kind of, financially literate-ish, but like you're not, a financial planner, and you're having trouble executing, like that's the typical type of person we work with. They're just like busy and they have a lot going on and they're relatively financial literate, but they just don't have a lot of capacity to get to the stuff. And then when they do get to it, they like spin their wheels a lot and they have trouble executing, and their plan is like, maybe they have one, but maybe it's been on the shelf for a while and they haven't really thought about it much. And, that's most people too, I think. I mean, I think a lot of people are in that situation where they're just kind of like coasting a little bit. And that's the type of person that I think should, and that's how I was kind of like coasting with my health. I mean, my working out or whatever. And I'm like, I get a personal trainer and all of a sudden I'm like working out like clockwork. Boom, boom, boom. He
Someone to
right
kick you in the ass. But I was thinking of it more like a doctor. where, but I could be wrong, where everybody kind of needs a doctor at some point in their life. And so
Yeah.
you need one when you're, like a baby for all the shots, but then you like don't need one forever. And then as you get health problems or something pops up every now and then, but maybe that's not the best analogy, because if you don't, you got to put in the work too. So it is
There's
more
some
like a
hardcore
trainer
like
or fitness trainer.
DIYers though. Like, there's a lot of people that are like really like they would never hire a personal trainer. They would, they might go to the doctor just because they have to. They're not really into, like, they can figure out the stuff on their own. Like, there's a pretty large percentage of people that are like not really interested in your advice or opinions, and
Oh
those kind
yeah,
of
we know
people
it.
should not work with a financial planner, because that's, they can, whether they're doing a good job or not. I'm not going to get into that because that just depends, and who knows. But
So you're saying there's a lot of people that are self-educated enough that are really good at it and self-trained that they're doing a good job. But there's a lot of people that suck. Their finances are terrible, but they're not motivated, so it's not worth it. I mean, is that really your point? Because it's like they're going to be with the planner, but not putting in the work, so they're not ready for it, like a fitness trainer.
It's just such a personal preference. I think I don't know. It's been hard for me to figure out because I'm on the other side of the table. I think the people we work with would be a better representation of like what that qualifier is. But I think if you feel like there's room for improvement in your life, financially speaking, and if you feel like there's not a lot of direction, like not a good plan with your finances, like if you feel like your finances are not being used as a tool to like improve your life, those are all good like signals that you might benefit from the help from a third party. And then really it's all about like talking to somebody, and like, you don't have to get married to a financial planner. It's kind of like a doctor or anything. You can go visit them a few times and be like, are we jiving here? Like, is my health getting better? Like, are we making any progress? And that's the true test, because it's, you have to improve from that experience.
Well, and I will make a huge recommendation because, May and I have benefited significantly from your company's services, and we love the relationships we've built. But you guys are kind of unicorns in the world of financial planning because you're fee only, which is a huge deal, where you're, we're essentially hiring a financial consultant, not hiring somebody that's going to try to sell us a whole bunch of different vehicles, which we don't necessarily know are the best deal, but they're the best deal for the person that's advising you. So,
yeah,
I mean, I look at fee only as kind of the same thing as direct primary care versus, going to CVS and seeing a nurse practitioner. And I wonder if you're going to get a prescription when you're like seeing a practitioner in a pharmacy.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the financial services industry is a train wreck. I mean, it's kind of like healthcare is a train wreck too. I mean, the financial services, like 90+% of them, of people in financial services, are pushing products, which is kind of unfortunate. Like, I hate that that's happening, but that's the way it is. So like most financial advisors, I'm doing air quotes, are like selling products. So that's the other thing. I kind of talk like everybody needs a financial planner. It would probably be worthwhile to be like, is this even a financial planner that's saying that they're a financial planner? Because most of them, unfortunately, are not. They're selling products. They're getting kickbacks. They're not actually. One really easy test is, are you paying them money? Like, are you paying them any money? And if there's no money being exchanged.
Yes, that's the best quote I ever heard. If you're getting a service for free,
that's a problem.
You are not the customer. You are the product.
Correct. Yes. Exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not usually free.
That comes from Elgato Malo, the bad cat on Substack. The guy's a genius.
Yeah. No, that's good.
He's like, why should you pay Twitter $10 a month to get a blue check mark? Because then you're the customer.
Correct.
You have power over that company.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
different.
the other way around.
When it's
why
free,
is it free on Facebook?
It's like, it's not free. There's something getting pushed or something. I mean, it's either advertising or like they're selling products, or both. And that's just the way the economics.
So how does somebody look up or try to find a fee only financial planner in their area? Is there like a I thought I heard this
Yeah.
before. Isn't there
You
like a
can do,
directory or somewhere you can Google? Do you just
yeah,
Googled
you
it?
can
Fee
do
only
like,
financial planners?
that's harder. You can do, that might work, but I don't know that that's the most reliable. There's an organization called NAPFA, NAPFA, that's like only, it's like the Association for Fee Only Advisors. So
Oh,
like
right,
that
right.
organization has a find an advisor thing. And there's another one called XY Planning Network, and they're all fee only. So anybody in XY Planning is fee only.
Okay.
Those are two really good ones. And the problem is there's just not enough of us yet. So it's kind of like direct primary care, like you were talking about, Tim, is there's just not, it's so early in it. There's not a ton of us. So it's kind of like slim picking sometimes, especially if you're in rural areas and you end up
Yes.
working with like Billy Bob at the bank who's selling all kinds of products. And that's no good.
Or most people end up just working with whoever like company they're employed by, has their money going into a retirement account, and then they
Yeah.
just call them up or not, or just watch it turn over.
Yes. That's
So
no good.
how do you or I would say, how do we talk about the values driven planning with your money? I mean, what's that all about? Instead of like, I need to save at least $1 million for retirement, which is, I don't know what this number that everybody has in their head. Maybe it's from our generation. Now you probably need 3 or 5
pretty
or
soon
something.
it's going to be
or
$1 billion.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Numbers going up fast. Yeah. I mean, I think, well, the question is like, what's the purpose of money? And I think
Right.
what is the purpose of money? It's like, I think it's to make life better or improve or use it as a tool to make life better for yourself or others around you. That's at least how I view it. So I think it's a good question to ask, like yourself, like, what's the purpose of money, or how do you view the purpose of money? And if you're, I mean, maybe if you haven't thought about it a lot, you gotta, you sit down and think about it. But then you could ask like, well, how am I doing with this? Like, so if I say the purpose of money is to like improve my life and the people around me, then I look at like, how am I doing in regards to that? A lot of times when you do that, you're like, not doing so good. And it could come in the sneaky form of like, you're desiring money so much that you're working so much that's taking away from your time so that you can't do those things that make you happier. So money's complicated. It's like, it might not just be like the money itself, but it could be like the desire to make more or like earn more and work more. A lot of people struggle with that. It's like this desire to earn more just cause. But the problem is a lot of times that they haven't like peeled back the layers on like, why are we doing this? And it's a good question. So really for most people, it's like to improve their life, and what the answer to that question. So what does an improved life look like? And to me, it's like living out your values, like alignment with your values. So your values, I would define values as what's most important. So when ideally you get this like perfect alignment, which is really impossible, but like you want to strive for, where your actions are like in alignment with your values. So like the things you're doing are very much in alignment with your values. And I think that's when you can start to confidently say, yes, I feel good about saying like, I'm using my money as a tool to help improve my life. It's improving the lives of people around me as well. And, I'm doing a good job. But when the further away those deviate, when you're if you're the person that's like, family's important, it's important to me to like give charitably. It's important for me to provide education for my children, but yet like your actions are like completely in conflict with that. That's where you start to have problems and, cognitive dissonance, that kind of thing. You start to feel like you're not the person. I mean, you're not living up to the person you say you're wanting to be. And then, either you bury your head in the sand or there's all kinds of reactions to that. But like, really it's about understanding what's most important to you and starting to connect that with your money. And a lot of people just look at it like money, like separately. They're like, they don't connect it with like these values over here. Or some people are like, I haven't even thought about values. What do you mean values?
No, I think
Yeah,
that's
we had to do that
amazing.
exercise once. What would your if money were no object and you had complete access to cash, what would your day look like? And what would your short-term goals, the other thing is planning your short-term goals, your medium-term goal for like a year out, or your like long-term goal, 5 to 10 years. What would your day and what would you do? And I remember we did that exercise the first time. It was hard for me because very hard.
I don't know
for me
what's so hard about it. It's like you get up, you go to the gym, you drink coffee, and then it's hookers and blow. Like it's not that hard. I'm a simple man.
Just well, for me, just because we're doing that doesn't mean I enjoy it.
Exactly. There's
but
a
that
marital
was
values conflict right there.
There you go. But that was a hard thing for me, and to actually sit down and think about it. And when I did, it really, I don't know, struck me in a way that and not that everything was off dissonant either. Some of it was lining up perfectly, and I'm like, oh, this is important, but never really thought of it that way. And other stuff is more important, and I'm not really focusing on that. But I think that's a really important exercise for people to do. But also to your point, like I like the whole if you're happy, you kind of look at your money trail, and that's a reflection of your values and where it's going. Right. And even if you don't know, versus if you're not happy and you're like, why is everything horrible? Look at my money trail. It's a sign of a lot more than you really would think.
It's really interesting because when you were talking about the whole money should be this thing that makes your life and those around you better. And I love that. I think that is a great foundational value. But I think of this interview that Gene Simmons did with this Canadian interviewer several years ago. And this guy's doing the arrogant kind of semi-woke liberal thing. And he's like, well, Gene, it's not about the money. And Gene's like, actually it is. It's entirely about the money. And he was just taken aback. And he's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, here's the thing. He goes, George, you and I get to do something that we love, that we find fun, and people pay us very well for it because we're in entertainment. The people that make the world go around, they do it only for money. The guy that like empties the crapper at the fair and picks up your garbage and works in the city works department, he's not doing that because it's a passion project. He's doing that because someone pays him. And those people, if they don't exist, there's no society. So yes, it's entirely about the money. And then he went into how, he's got kind of this perverse sense of value because he was talking about, he said, and it was like 1976, when they signed with like Casablanca Records or whatever, they paid him a $10 million check to Kiss. And he showed his mother, this Holocaust survivor, the check. He goes, look at this, Mom, we made it. And she looks at it and she pats him on the cheek and she goes, and Jeannie, what's next? Now, what are you going to do? And he's like, dude, this is how you keep score. And I'm like, really? I think there's more to it than just keeping score. But I found it really fascinating because I thought what he said about most people go to a job they don't like because people pay them is 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's lots of value in doing those jobs.
Right.
Right. And we've struggled with that. And I think that, there's a lot of people in the world, you're right, where it's not, Tim and I always talk about, Tim hates the whole Oprah thing of, just find your passion and the money will follow. Well, for most people, a job is a job, it's an income, but it's not where all your passion lies. And that's the way it is. We don't all get to be Hollywood actors or have a winery that makes all this millions of dollars or whatever your passion is, all the money is. And so I think for a lot of people, that fallacy of the job is there to provide the income, and then your passions can lie outside of that and use your money for that. But I think there's a lot of people chasing dreams and spending money to get there, or disgruntled because they're earning this income and they're unhappy because they're like, well, it's not lining up with not values as much as
your purpose.
Well, it's not lining up with your passion.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, if we lived in that world where everyone just spoke to the universe and the universe gave you money back, then enjoy your plugged toilet.
Yeah. Because
that's how you're going to live in plugged toilet land.
Yeah, exactly.
And who's going to roof a house in Georgia in August? Nobody. It's just so on its face insane to me. But I guess it assuages your conscience when you live in a 17,000 square foot house in Montecito, California. I mean, the universe must have liked me or whatever.
It's hard to know. I try not to. I mean, it's very tempting to judge other people, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, because I've seen so many people of different levels say similar things. Like, everybody kind of justifies their actions pretty well, to where they're like, nobody's like, man, I do dumb things with money. Like, people have a lot of very thought out reasons for the things that they're doing. And but that's also why it's good to kind of take a step back and be like, well, let's like do some assessment on, like, is this really most important? Like, what's my purpose? Like, why am I doing this? Am I going to have regrets when I get older? Like, when I pass away, like, if I'm one of the exercises people do is, like, think about if they've passed away, like, and they're, looking back, like, what's life been. I've heard people talk about, like, the graveside. It's like the dash, like, that's, really that's very meaningful, because it's just, I mean, it looks pretty simple, but it goes by in a flash. But like, it's it's worthwhile, I think, every once in a while to think, am I living the life that's like ideal in the time that I have? Because time is pretty short, and doing that, like, is such a good exercise to kind of like challenge yourself on some of these like natural tendencies we all have to, like, justify everything and get in our routines and, like, just blow money on dumb things. I mean, it's not that's not what we want to do.
I think at one point I offered up as tribute, Tim and I, to be on Ryan's previous podcast show to talk about stupid things we've done with money that we don't recommend, because we've, done the dumb investments, dumb spending, the spender saver, nothing massively like that really takes you down, and no bankruptcy, no divorce, and so forth. But we bought the stupid timeshare vacation package thing. I don't even know what that was. That was that was a blow, and then other crazy stuff. So you're right. People don't want to talk about it, but I think if people are more honest about that, about sharing their sins, so to speak, with the money, that would be helpful in encouraging other people, stumbling blocks, just like we do with weight issues and other things. So what are I was going to ask, because I wanted to have you talk about this, if you could do like a summary of like the top 3 or 5 biggest financial mistakes really briefly, versus the top 3 to 5 like most important things to do. What would those be, recommendation wise?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistakes are most common, especially in working age groups, are around like material purchases, particularly like the house. I think that's probably the biggest mistake in our culture, is committing to too much like material, whether it's the house, the car, or the boat, or whatever, and then that gets you in this position where you have to work more, earn more, just to kind of keep the thing going. And
so spending outside your like
means.
Leverage outside your means, like leveraging too much mortgage or too much car payment or boat or toy, or is that right?
And I don't think that directly, or that doesn't necessarily have to be a problem for everyone. Like, it might be that you say, like, you truly are like, I don't really care about anything other than having a fancy house, and I've like thought through it a lot, and that's really what I want to do. And that's, I imagine there's somebody out there that's really gone through that, and they really just want to have a fancy, nice house. And then if you've done the due diligence, it's all good. Like, spend a bunch of money on a house. The problem that happens is more that people say family is important, and faith is important, and giving is important, and like, I want to send my kids to college, and then they go buy the fancy house. That's where a problem happens, because you're crunching yourself. You put yourself in a position where you can't do it.
Okay.
Because of the immediate.
I think that's excellent. Do you have any recommendations for financial literacy books? Because I think that there, at least in my generation, is the number of people that are just completely clueless blows my mind.
I like Millionaire Next Door for like philosophy of money kind of stuff. It's like basic personal finance philosophy.
There was one in Canada we were growing up, and I don't know if they still have it, called The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton, I believe. And it was the same type of concept.
He just went through all the things that you need. You pay yourself first.
Yeah.
This is how much you should, percentage of income, get a will, life insurance.
And isn't there a second Millionaire Next Door #2, or am I thinking of another book?
I think there is. I haven't read that. The original is the
best
big one, the best one. Yeah, I mean it's just like foundational. It's good for like foundational. It should be, I think, like the first book everybody reads around learning personal finance. Well, I mean, like unless your parents are responsible to the level they're giving you books. I mean, there's plenty of good books for kids too.
Right.
That could happen even sooner. But like The Millionaire Next Door is kind of like a 20s age range book.
Yeah. No, and our kids are far more literate than we were, especially at their age. I mean, our son has everything planned out for, I mean, he might be living in a tent for the rest of his life so he can retire early, but whatever.
You think that they would make that part of the high school reading curriculum, but the stuff that they're making them read now and the agenda that goes on in schools kind of goes
schools are not
away
going
from
that
anything.
direction.
I know. So, but that's a good read.
How can you graduate from high school? You graduate from high school with a basic understanding of finance, especially compound interest, both on the debt side and the investment side.
Correct.
And no CPR. Like you should have to have those two skills.
Yeah,
to be like a functioning.
And how to sign your name. Kids don't know how to do cursive anymore. So I remember our kids didn't even know how to.
My kids are not
sign.
even taught
Didn't do cursive.
No,
so it's like, how do you sign your name? You just print it,
draw a line.
Exactly.
It's not going to matter. Everyone's just going to be chipped. So
send me a DocuSign.
Yeah.
There you go. How about any top 3 financial quick wins, like what you should do? I don't know, put
I think
10% away, or just
I think those are some
blow
good
it
ones,
all
like
on
save
fun.
first. Save first, give first, spend the rest. That's always a good kind of foundational thing. I think take it easy on yourself. Like a lot of people beat themselves up about finances, and then it's kind of like dieting, like people with like diets are like, I got to do everything. And then they get into it and they try to do everything and then they fail and then they do nothing. And it's this like cycle of like perfection and then failure and perfection. And then they never really actually accomplish anything. That's super common with finances too, is like you go at it. You're like, I'm going to do the perfect financial plan and we're going to figure out everything. And I'm going to read everything and check all my boxes. And then it's overwhelming and it's impossible to be perfect. And then you fail a bunch of times and then you give up totally and you do nothing. So like, I wouldn't take that approach. I would be more like, take it easy on yourself. Especially if you're going at it alone, especially if you're, single and early on, it's just like, let's start with like a little tiny win, like one little baby step. If you can make small improvements. So if you're not saving anything, like saving a few percentage in your 401k is a fantastic step in the right direction. And then in 6 months, go do it again. Like, change it from 2 to 4% and then 4 to 6%. Like when you're young, you can take these tiny small steps and then it ends up being like massive change by the time you're later in your career. I think what happens is people get complacent and they do nothing. And that's what you want to avoid, like this whole like coasting mentality.
What do you think of budgeting? And do you have any favorite budgeting tools or apps?
I hate budgeting personally. I personally don't love the details of the budget. I'm not a like super detail, get in the weeds kind of thing. I don't like tracking routine expenses that happen every single month. It kind of like frustrates me personally. I'm a fan of like looking at total spending as a barometer kind of.
Okay. And Tim's like loving on you right now. He's like, yes. This is
I'm just trying to come up with my Dave Ramsey impersonation. You're going to coast your way all the way to financial hell. You're right on your way. If I was you, I'd cut up your cards. And actually, I would torture myself with those cut up little pieces before I threw them away in the garbage.
So
Dave Ramsey, would not like this conversation right now.
No, because I'm like, that's the whole delayed gratification until you're old and retired. And then you could be dead by then. And we know so many people that
like I think of these times in my
How
life
to
when we're raising the kids and you want to be home and then I needed a day off. And so, on Fridays was my day. Okay. So then every other day you're doing kid stuff in a weekend and then you're doing church stuff and whatever. And Fridays, May's like, yeah, just, I'd go water skiing. I'd get 5 skydives. I would
Mm,
come home and I was a happy guy. And you
yeah.
sit there and you go, okay, that's why you work. And this idea that you're going to delay everything and
Mm.
never buy,
And then be old and like your kids won't want to hang out with you then. And like
yeah, it makes 0 sense to me. I mean, be financially responsible, but this
don't
isn't an austerity contest. Like the most
know. What
austere,
are
the
you
one who
saving
dies
for
the
too?
most austere wins.
Yeah.
Like I
I
don't get
mean,
it.
my wife has to remind me of this. Like I say some of this I say, and then I'm like, my actions are a little different. Like I'm a hardcore saver. I say like I'm not into budgeting. That's true. But I am a big believer in like setting hardcore limits on lifestyle. So like I track the total lifestyle and I think we have to stay within those bounds. Otherwise, like the alarm bells go off and we're gonna have a conversation about it and figure out what's going on. And then I'm a big fan of like saving everything above and beyond that. But like my wife, as my business has done better and income's gone up, our savings is higher. And my wife a lot of times is like, what are you saving for? Like retirement looks good now. And I'm like, uh, you know, so you have challenges on all. That's the thing about money that's so interesting is it's like never, there's always these challenges, whether you're like broke and in credit card debt or like rocking and rolling and it's just different challenges too, so that's partly what makes it so interesting, but it's kind of a never ending challenge.
I was going to jump in and say, so, we've talked about, kind of joked about the Dave Ramsey thing because it's that continuous delayed gratification thing. Then there's the reverse, which Tim hates, which is the FIRE movement, which is the new thing,
Yeah.
financial independence, retire early, which, then it's like, what are you retiring to? But the other thing Tim says, especially in the physician world or lots of professions, if you retire and pull the plug, and then decide you want to go back to that, you almost can't in some ways. So you're really limiting yourself. And most people, I always get jealous when, we meet our friends that have worked in service industries like the fire department or police, because they, you put in their 20 or 25 years and then they get to retire with a full pension. And I'm like, well, that's nice. Now you're retired, but they usually go and do something else and get another career.
Yeah.
And are doing something else because most people aren't meant to just do nothing their whole life. So what's your thought on the whole FIRE movement, or do you want to
I think it's
like
just
modify it?
yeah, I think it's kind of like, yeah, it's similar. The problem with it is it's the reverse of like YOLO, you only live once.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people, I feel like the FIRE thing, in my experience with clients that bring it up, it's typically a good like indicator of some problems in their career. And
You think?
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so, but
It's like you
they
want
don't
out.
usually say that. Nobody ever is like, I'm hardcore FIRE because my career sucks. But typically they're FIRE for a reason, and it's oftentimes because there's problems within their career. And so I would be like, the problem with FIRE is it's like typically a lot of times it pushes you or it motivates you to work even more, spend even less in a time in your life when it's probably some of the best times to work less and spend more, so it kind of
Good
forces you
point.
into this backwards position. Um, and then on top of that, it's like, if there really is career problems underlying it, like, let's look at the career problems and like try to solve those. And a lot of times those are pretty solvable if you are honest with yourself about it. Like, so a lot of, we work with a lot of physicians and there's a ton of like career problems. People are frustrated. And so we're like, maybe you're frustrated with your work. Maybe you go start a direct care practice. We were talking about direct primary
Right.
care earlier. That's like a fantastic like career shift that a lot of people are doing that can kind of like, so we've seen people make that shift where they're all of a sudden like, FIRE, not interested in FIRE anymore. It's no longer a thing, and they have time back and they're enjoying. So they've shifted towards YOLO. I think it's a balance, and FIRE is so hardcore one way that it causes like imbalance.
Yeah,
Right.
it's for, if people don't understand what it means, it's an acronym for financial independence, retire early.
I think I
Yeah.
I
just
think,
said
you
that
know, yeah, but I can't remember if you did, because
because you don't listen.
to quote
That's-
Alex
there you go.
Jones,
That's a
"I'm
whole
kinda
other
retarded."
thing. But Daniel's not here for marriage counseling, just financial
No,
marriage.
no, exactly. And so, but it is just, I think, especially if you're a physician or a dentist or somebody that has a reasonably well-paying, very narrow set of skills, you're
Mm.
really setting yourself up for a potential disaster. I mean, if you're going to
Unless you're
retire,
acquiring other skills, excuse me, other skills along the way,
well,
or branching in a different field. But for most, you're right, we're tradespeople,
or you have
and we're kind
multiple
of limited.
sources of actual income that don't require you to see patients,
Mhm.
that's different.
Yeah,
But if you're doing traditional retirement, where you're just trying to get a gigantic nest egg and then pull the pin at 45 instead of 65, and you're eliminating 20 years, you're going to live 20 years longer, so to speak, and you're
Mhm.
going to, that's a skill set that you you're out of medicine for 5 years, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
You're out of the, you're a finance guy that works for Coca-Cola, and you take a sabbatical for 5 years, you're still a finance guy. You can go back and get a job at a smaller company or whatever. But man, dentists, I mean, there's surgeons, that's a tactile skill that you can't lose.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal to pull the pin. It's a big deal even for a doctor to retire, just
Mhm.
because, I mean, we're noticing this as well. I mean,
well,
May's probably very close to not seeing patients again, but I look at it and I'm like, man, unless I don't mind seeing patients, I like it less than I did 25 years ago. But at the same time, yikes.
It's a big jump.
it is,
Huge.
and the whole psychology of it, especially as you know, as a career person that you've done this. This was your first career for myself, and identity. Even I always thought I was going to retire and quit at 50 because I would be done. And my story is long and sordid, and I always kind of struggled with even liking it from the get-go. And honestly, I thought if I failed internship year, I'd just go work at the perfume counter at Macy's or Nordstrom because I hated it that much. But I did make a wonderful career out of it, and so to speak, almost 30 years. But now retiring, and even though Tim's still working and I have other options, that whole identity and wrapped up in that and pulling the plug officially is very crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I think people don't think that. They think,
Right.
financial independence is one thing where you don't have to do it. But even then, the whole thing of, well, I got to do something with my life. I want to be involved in the community. There's lots of things to do, but when that's what or you still like it. I mean, it's a tough thing, even if you are burnt out and hate it.
Yeah, that goes back to, like, once again, like we were talking about before, is it's really important, I think, to get in this habit of doing these like deep thought exercises, like I was talking about, like values and purpose, and like why are you doing what you're doing, and what is your identity, and like just thinking through that. I was interviewing on my podcast a physician. He's a hospice physician. Dr. Jordan Grummett was his name. But he worked with people late stage in their life, and got to learn a lot of their regrets. And one of the things that he found is that a lot of times it's just related to people not really just not even thinking about it. Like, it didn't cross their mind, and they didn't really. And so one of the things hospice has done that's really interesting is they've created this life review, I think is what they call it, hospice life review. And it's a great exercise, not for people necessarily. I mean, at the end of their life, it's great. It's important to do because kind of they like document all these things that were important, why they did what they did, what their identity was, the important people in their lives, that kind of stuff. But what he was sharing is like, that's something you should be doing when you're like 20 years old and 25 years old. And like getting in this routine of thinking like, what is my identity? Is my identity tied up in my career? That might be a little concerning. Like, why is my identity tied up in my career? Like, what's my purpose? Like, am I following my purpose? Why am I doing these things that I'm doing? Because we kind of get in these habits and we just kind of roll through life, and all of a sudden we're like, oh no, snuck up on me. And that's human nature.
And
No,
that's
exactly
the whole thing of relationships. We talk to friends, patients, everybody, when that happens so much when the kids leave home, right? If the whole relationship has been about the kids and raising these
Yeah,
kids,
same
and then
thing.
same thing. All of a sudden, kids are gone, and then the couple's looking at each other like, "Well, who are you? We haven't worked on on the relationship. Their whole identity or their purpose was the kids, and now that's gone, and things blow up." So same with career. You're right. It's another important thing
The
to look
career
at.
one is way harder for me. That's a way harder. I mean, I think May and I get along just as well or even better now with our kids gone. Plus, we don't have to wear pants, which is awesome. But the the career thing, and I think especially for a lot of men, it's a big deal, right? Like you go to a golf tournament and you get with a foursome of guys you've never met before. What's the first thing you say? It's like, hey, my name's Tim, and it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? I mean, I don't know. I do lots of things. I breathe once in a while. I blink. I go to the bathroom. I mean, but it literally
they're going to be like, this dude's a weirdo.
Yeah, exactly. But identity is really associated with your socioeconomic status and what you do for a living. And it's important because it's important, and it's important because that's how you network, and but it's a big deal. And then you do something, you get really good at it, and then you quit doing it. It's like, dude, I would say, I find it really challenging.
Our generation, but even with our kids now, more so women too. So many women are career women, not stay-at-home moms. Things are starting to shift a little bit, but I think it's probably more important identity as in career, falsely, but for women, it's an issue too. Because I didn't think it was for me, and it clearly is. And I know a lot of it has to do with how I was raised and how I was taught career is important. And my mom I remember when I was a doc and we were out shopping or something, and she saw my credit card, and she's like, "How come on the credit card it just says your name, May Hindmarsh?" She goes, "It doesn't say doctor on there." And she was like taken aback, and she's like, "You worked really hard for that degree, and your title is Dr. Hindmarsh." So it was all about identifying as that person. And so I was raised that being a wife and a mom is just as important and things I like to do, but because I had that career tag, I guess it was way more even instilled in me as of importance than I thought. And now I'm at the point where I have all these other things, but there's so much more baggage that goes along with it, which would be another podcast or 20. But for women, I think it's just as important, because women, I hear them networking and talking. It's like, this is, my name, this is what I do. Not everybody, but
I see us. I feel like I'm already seeing our kids being taught these like cultural norms around these. It's like with their sports, it's like, it's all about winning and like success and competition. And I'm like, where did the fun's disappearing? And, it's like, why are we doing this to our kids? And kind of like getting them into this routine of like, it's all about it's like, so their identity becomes like how they do in this sport and their success and their grades. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, I don't like seeing that, because I know that's not like their purpose. Like, that's not why they're here. So it's almost like you have to fight the norms to kind of.
Well, it's all about recognition, whether it's social media, right? You got to have all these followers, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It's all about how many followers, how many likes. I mean, that's what I think the younger kids are seeing. And so same thing though with the sports or the academics is like, well, are you, how many wins you're getting, your achievements? And that's, I think, the next generation that's coming up. It's all about the fame, the notoriety, reaching the top of the box.
I'll take winning any day over everyone gets a trophy, because those people are worthless.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. The people that really believe in that, they're like, don't hire them to do a job, because they can't do a job. I mean, it's like, I remember.
No, but I think Daniel's saying that you can still work hard and achieve, but your identity shouldn't have to be in being known for that.
Slippery slope,
Yes.
Like we, competition is important, but like winning is not most important. Like I'm in a soccer league with all my kids are in it. It's called I Am Third, and it's a faith-based league. And the I Am Third, the whole like premise of the league is teaching I am third, which is basically like Christ first, others second, I am third. And so even within this league that's like really pushing this whole idea that like you're not that, it's not all about you and your success and their identity. We still see it happening. It's like still this pull towards like I am first. I always joke about it with the parents. I'm like, yeah, you know, this is aren't we in the I am first league? Isn't that what this called? It's called, you know, but no, it's, you know, we're trying to teach that. So it's, you know, you got to really push against that, I think.
I think it's balanced because there's a place, you're right, to teach them to work hard and achieve and win. But there's so many aspects of our life where you're not going to be first. You're not going to be, you know, all these kids playing Pop Warner football, thinking they're all going to be in the NFL, which our son figured out really quickly that he did the stats on it. And then he's like, that ain't going to happen. To being like, I'm going to be the top. I mean, I think it's good to have goals and achieve to get to, but not everything in your life. I mean, you have to be realistic.
Right. And money is just a tool to like amplify that. Like money just like will make you more of whatever you are already. So it like tends to just amp all this stuff up a lot, you know, the more of it you have.
Right. And if anything has taught us that, the great experiment of American lotteries, you know, if you're a drunken hillbilly and you inherit and you come a whole bunch of money, you're a way more drunken hillbilly.
You're making fun of my favorite show, my $1 Million Dream Home, lottery dream.
Yeah, but $1 Million Dream Home, guys are winning $5 million and they're buying a $600,000 house. That to me seems responsible. It's like they're buying a nice house, but they're obviously putting the rest of this away, and they haven't quit their jobs. It's the I don't forget what network is on where they had those, like, you know, what happened to them now, and it was fascinating. Because it's exactly what Daniel's saying. The people that were the whatever, you know, they were out partying anyway. So now they're partying and they're buying everything for their friends. Their money lasts 2 years and they're gone. The best story, this family owned a brewery and they were, you know, killing themselves to try to make their brand successful. And then they won, you know, $10 million, and they just put it into their business because that's what they cared about. And they go, yeah, now it's easier to run our business. We're super happy. And I'm like, exactly. And this other guy's got like Venus de Milo reproduction statues in his house. And I'm like, that guy's going to be broke right away. It's just wild.
Yeah. I mean, you want to see what people's like true, like, financial literacy and their, you know, you want to really understand somebody, like give them a bunch of money. I mean, like and part of it is developing. Like that's why I'm cautious with my kids and like in our planning. Like I don't want my kids to like come into too much responsibility too early. Like an 18-year-old with a bunch of money is kind of like a recipe for disaster just because they're not like developed. I don't think that's enough time to like get to that level of experience and knowledge to where they're able to like manage it responsibly.
Hey,
but
yes, so to that point, any tips or thoughts on, because we talked with our when we did our estate planning with our attorney and our wills, on advice on when you should, like, I mean, obviously it's an individual choice, every kid is different, but is there a kind of a general guideline on, so if you're going to pass away, you don't want to dump your whole like estate onto your 18-year-old, do you recommend sort of guided like trust funds to divvy it up, or do you say 30 is a good age, or no, 25?
I say lock up forever.
Give it away to Mother Teresa Foundation.
No, I mean, yeah. Well, some people resonate with that because, like, you just, especially for young kids, you just don't know. And so to me personally, it's a very personal decision. But like to me personally, I don't want it. I would hate it if it somehow was that my money made my kid worse off. Like, and I think that's entirely possible if it comes at the wrong time, you know. Absolutely. Like if it's too early. So that would be like the worst thing to know, that like I had passed on money to my kid that made them worse off. Like I can't, like I would hate to see that kind of thing happen. So to me, I err like on the side of like later in life, like, you know, 30 plus, you know, you can design like estate plans that are like very flexible where you're like, somebody else is responsible. That's why I trust is nice, because you can make somebody else responsible for making those decisions, and then like you can communicate to them those desires and be like, listen, be very strict on that. Like only give it to them for like necessities until they're like 30 or whatever, unless they're not responsible. And then in that case, like never, because if my
So
child is
how do
not
you
responsible
judge?
with money, like they're not.
How do you judge responsibility? Like how do you? Because I mean, now
Oh, and then
you're
there's
bringing in
divorce.
Yeah.
First marriage and divorce in your 20s too, which
I
is the
mean,
other thing.
yeah. Well, it's on me to get them to a point where they're going to be a responsible adult. Responsibility is difficult to measure, but I think part of it is like somewhat successful in their own right. Like they figured out their way in the world, and they're like doing it themselves. Like they're kind of like they've flown away.
Yeah.
I think to me that's like
I think later is better, and you can always change your will if you're still alive and
Mhm.
scale it back, and you're like, oh, they're 25 and they're kicking ass and they're doing better than I am because now they have a financial degree or whatever it may be. But you
Right.
can't undo a big mistake where they inherit
and
a
having
But
crap.
it comes
it,
down
it
to conversations too. Like that's why people need to talk more about money. Like talk to your kids about money. Like you can pick up on things pretty easily when you start to talk about money with people. Like I can tell y'all are very, mature or like wise in your like knowledge of money and how it works and how it affects people. And like picking up on that is a big deal versus if you're, thinking maybe there's some immaturity there. Like that's something to address.
well, and then your kids get married, and
Mhm.
like I can't imagine if what my parents would have felt like distributing the inheritance to somebody that then it goes into your estate, and then you get divorced, and now they've actually I mean, it just gets super complicated. I just
Mhm.
spent 2 weeks with a friend of mine who's a tax attorney in Canada and deals with
Oh,
some really high net worth people, like very, very high net worth. And it's all the guy is very wise. He's a very devout Christian, and you listen to these stories, and it's just
all
he's
over the
basically
place.
a family counselor, is what it
Oh
comes
yeah.
down to, because the craziness that goes on and how crazy people get when they've been raised in massive affluence, and then they see this huge pile, like tsunami of cash coming their way, and their parents
They
are
get
now in their
crazy.
90s, and people lose their freaking minds.
Yeah. And
It's
usually
wild.
usually the communication has been non-existent. Like a lot of
Right.
times there's been like no conversations. It's been like hush hush. Everybody knows the grandparents are loaded out of their mind. So they're like, I'm probably gonna get a big inheritance, but like nobody talks about it. And then all of a sudden it gets right at that point, or like health goes down, and then everybody gets all nutty, and it's a train wreck. But like communication solves so many of these problems. It's like, if that's a situation, like, why not talk about it earlier? Um, Another thing I think that people mess up on is like they don't share their money with their like. It's kind of ridiculous to me that like so many people pass inheritances and they don't spend a dime with those people while they're alive. It's like, why not
Hmm.
do like awesome fancy trips or the things you would have loved to do with them or like them to see them do while you're still alive and enjoy it with them? And then that's going to reduce their inheritance some.
Yeah, no, it's my mother did
Yeah,
that,
I love that.
and I mean that
Yeah, and if our
was a
kids
big
are
deal for me.
listening, I'm spending
Yeah.
it all. We're spending all your
Yeah. And
money right
then
now
in that case, it's
I'm
like
visiting you.
spend it all down
We're-
and like there's nothing left. It's all good. But y'all
It's
had
the
a good
Frank
time.
Sinatra. It's the Frank Sinatra estate planning. He's like, yeah, you're not getting much. Do what I did. Earn it yourself.
Yeah. I like it. I mean,
that's what he said.
responsibility.
Yeah, and then he went to the bar. But hey,
And we
it's
just
it's
actually
it's
did
what
an
it was.
interview, which will have come out by now, I think, on gerontology, geriatric planning, end of life discussions with your parents or loved ones,
Mm.
with Janice Goldmintz, and she talked about that. She's a social worker that helps do end of life planning, but the big thing is not just talking about, death and dying wishes, but the financial planning as well, because I mean, gosh, once you go, then kids are left with all the stuff like where to find
Mm,
everything, the
yeah.
passwords, the bank accounts, etc. But I think it is really important to have that discussion.
And sooner the better, because and
Yes.
you never know, you never know what can happen, or like memory. Once things start to kind of like go downhill, it's a lot of times too late. I've worked with people where the memory loss has already gone down, and then it's almost like everything kind of freezes in place, and it's like there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes chaos ensues, but ideally it's like the conversations all happen when everybody's like happy and healthy and got plenty of time.
It was
But
so
Right.
weird because
Right.
there's such weird generational dynamics that go on with this.
mm,
It's like I told my mother, I said, she had liquidated everything, and everything she had was just in financial vehicles. Like she didn't have houses or cars or anything. And I would not recommend this as financial planning, but it worked out for our family. I just said put it all in my sister's name, and she'll divide it up, but we'll make it honest. Just give us a spreadsheet and show us where everything is.
mm,
And she didn't want to do it. I don't want anyone to know how much I
Oh
have.
yeah.
And I'm like, we're going to know like 2 seconds after you pass away.
Yeah. I know, it was bizarre.
So, and also, my sister that's running your estate obviously knows where everything is. So just tell the 4 of us where it is. We know what
yeah.
what the will states, and we'll figure it out now. That way it's all accountable. It's all out in the open. Everyone knows how it's going to work.
And
Well,
then my
you
family had
can't
the
tell
opposite.
anybody how much money I have. And I'm like anyone, any one of my friends that lives 400 miles away from you gives 2 craps about how much money you have. Like, I mean, it was just
It's like
bizarre,
ingrained.
totally
Yeah.
ingrained. I mean, it's the depression mentality, I think. I mean, it was
Mm,
just, I'm like, nobody cares but us. No one else. Not a single person.
mm,
It's just
Yeah, and then
wild.
there's my parents that were the opposite, that, got to the point where it's like, yes, for the 100th time, I know where the key to the lockbox is, and yes, I know everything. And they would put our names on everything and joint with them, which then was another sign of bad financial planning mistake for some of our stuff in the living in different countries. But yeah, it was like joint kids when they got older, kids' names go on accounts that we can, blah blah blah, so that
yeah.
it's all done and
Yeah.
so there's
There's
so
all
many different
kinds of
ways.
things
I
to
know.
do.
I would say
And
get an attorney or a financial
yeah.
planner or both to
Yeah.
guide you through
If you're
that, and
home,
don't think you know it all.
all the discussions we talk about financial planners, it is like the older you get, if you're holding out, like it does become more complicated typically as you get older. And at the latest, like when you're really late in your life, if you're going to work with one, it's very helpful to have one like before you get really old, because they can kind of be like the third party voice of reason to some extent, and be like the translator of like all your wishes. And because you forget a lot of times what a lot of this stuff when you get older, we have memory
Right.
issues, so it's like somebody's got to be like
Yes.
the voice of all that, and it
Well,
gets
I have
dicey when you
memory
don't have
issues
that.
now. I
Yeah, I
forgot
know.
you all talked about fire.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously
But
there's an issue.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. No,
Getting up there.
I
So,
think that what are your kids? Do you give your kids a book to read now? So we're talking about books and going full circle back to educating kids. Is there any
Mhm.
kids books that are really good on money that off the top of your
Yes.
head, or just anyone?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. One of them is called The Golden Quest. And
Oh,
these are two like pretty small. I mean, like I don't think they're very there's there's not a lot of big seller kids books about finance.
mm-hmm.
So these are The Golden Quest is like a good one for like probably like 5 to 9 year olds, and it's
Okay,
great because it's like kind of like Millionaire Next Door sort of concepts, but for like that age.
got it.
So that one, even my 10-year-old has read that one too, and he like has reread it. I keep finding it on his bed. He's like reading it again. So it teaches lots of good like concepts of like rich and versus wealthy and compound interest and even like entrepreneurship and that kind of stuff is brought up in it. There's another one that I'm drawing a blank on that's really good.
Well,
I'll
you
send
can,
it to you afterwards.
yeah, you can think it, and we can always link it in there for sure.
My memory's going down too.
Yeah, well, we've talked your ear off. I mean, we could talk
I could talk for days about it.
all day long. I know, and I'm sure we'll be splitting this into a couple episodes too.
Yeah.
For those that need it in small snippets. But this has been awesome. Is there any, I don't know, last thoughts, words of wisdom on anything
Yeah. I think
that you can think of in the
I think
golden
it's
planning
important.
of how to live your life with your money?
A good takeaway is like, what's one thing you're going to do, like small step to improve your finances? Doesn't need to be
Perfect.
big. Just like one little tweak, like right now while you're listening, that you could do that. And it could be as small as like increasing your retirement contribution by 1%, or, or emailing the insurance agent that you've needed to get for years and years, like just sending an email, like one little tiny step to improve your finances. I think that's a really good action item. It's attainable. Everybody should be able to do it. And I think that's ultimately what it's about, is like starting to take those steps.
Perfect.
I love it.
Yep.
Small actionable steps are
Baby
doable and get you to your end goal, building the bridge with one little Lego block at a time instead of trying to leap to the other side and getting frustrated, as I often like to do. So,
Or getting
perfect.
up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom with an aging prostate and stepping on the Lego block.
Oh,
Which reminds me of a story of being in a hotel at one point and having
Yes,
Lego blocks
yes.
under our feet.
That was called the Seattle Marathon. And I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And our daughter was in a crib because she was still, she was like, what? 2 months
Oh,
old?
no,
Year
a little
old?
older
I don't
than
know. She
that.
was really little.
Maybe 6.
Anyways, and I stepped on this stupid toy she had, and it was Elmo's beatbox or whatever.
oh,
And you'd hit the button and Elmo would go country, and then he would sing a country song, and then it would be rock and roll.
And you couldn't shut it off. There's
you
no
couldn't shut
batteries.
it off.
No.
So I'm freaking out because I got to get up really early to go run this marathon, and I don't want to wake the baby, because then no one sleeps, and I take 2 steps and it's like country. I'm like,
oh no.
Yeah, he stayed awake or stayed asleep. So, anyways, on that note,
Good times.
yep, good times. It's all stages of life. That's definitely the case.
So you, why don't you give a little shout out to to our audience, and a little a disclaimer on what services you offer. You don't do fee-only financial planning for anybody, or for physicians, and
Yeah.
is it dentists as well? If someone wants to find you,
Yeah. So you can find us. Our the planning business is wrennefinancial.com, and we do financial planning for physicians and families. And then I think we mentioned this earlier, the podcast that I do is Finance for Physicians, which is basically like we dig in. So if you want to dig in to like money and life, that's a good place to start there. And then also the financial literacy piece too.
perfect. And that's on all major podcast
Yeah,
platforms.
financeforphysicians.co is the website, but it's on all, Apple and
Right.
all the podcast
Perfect.
players.
So yes, we
Perfect.
will link those in case anybody wants to hire you, and or listen. Anyone could listen. I think most physician finance advice is applicable, other than some little details to most people. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, thanks for joining us and having this conversation. And
Yeah,
it's been fun, and we'd love to have you
Yeah.
back. And
definitely.
if anybody has any specific questions, they can email us questions, and we can send them either your way or have you back on. So thanks
Sounds
again
good.
for being here and taking
Yeah.
the time with us.
Definitely. Good talking with you all.
And that's a wrap. Don't forget to assess your own financial situation and ask yourself if you're using money as a tool to improve your life and the lives of those around you.
Reflect on your values and make sure your actions and attentions are in alignment with what's truly important to you. If you have questions, be sure to reach out to Daniel at Wrenne, WRENNE, financial.com.
That's right. Wrenne with a W and 2 N's. WRENNE. And that
Shout
was a
out.
fun show, but we've got a great shout out.
Yes. Gwen Marie, you rock. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on our truth bomb last week. We noticed, and you're right, the glass can be refilled. Hopefully with wine. We appreciate you.
I love it. The glass can be refilled.
That's a really cool point. Because sometimes that bitch is half empty. Let's be honest. And you got to remember that you can refill it.
I love it. That's some of the best advice we've gotten. Thanks, Gwen Marie. All right, everybody. Stick around because we're back 3 times a week, or you can find us on the web and with our newsletter on Mondays. Truth Serum. Go sign up. We'll see you next time.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.